Right, the next submission is the Akaroa Ratepayers and Residents Association, Harry Stronach. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. It would be great to be able to come here and just discuss positive events and achievements. And there have been some. I mean, the work done on Peninsula unsealed roads in the last few years has been of a far better standard than it was previously. And you deserve credit for that. There's also been the final decision about the Akaroa Service Centre, and I understand the museum funding is sort of back on track, and that's good as well. But, you know, in the case of the roads, we're simply getting back to where we should have been. And the other events, Service Centre, museum and so on, if you get back to the status quo, that's not really moving forward. In the most recent General Service Satisfaction Survey, the one conducted by the Council, and I'm sure you're aware of this, your overall general approval rating is down to 49%. In the last 5 years, it's dropped from 74% to 49% and still heading downwards. In the annual plan consultation document, it effectively said, we are on the right path, we're going to carry on. Well, the evidence is that the ratepayers do not agree with that. There's a reality gap between the council on the one hand and the citizens and ratepayers on the other. Council is set on a path that's diverging from our expectations. So if it's going to be more of the same, we can predict the approval rating will continue to decline. Looking into the detail of the survey, we find that the Banks Peninsula ward maintained its position as being the most dissatisfied part of the city. So what's the underlying problem? The council is perceived as being impersonal and faceless. You've got a telephone system and a website, and sometimes it works, and often the result is frustration. What the council lacks is meaningful interaction at a person-to-person level with the population that you are supposed to be serving. The problem is that the council is not seen as serving the population at all. It is a fact, both nationally and globally in fact, that local governments are becoming increasingly autocratic. The council is becoming a controlling and instructing entity, managing rather than serving communities, and then only provided they fit the standard mould and provided that they conform. The council is perceived as being self-serving. The cynical view is that it is a self-perpetuating machine. Staff do reports, attend to projects, there's more reports, consultants get hired, they get fired, some work gets done, and along the way more staff gets employed, and the rates continue to go up to feed the machine. The ratepayers and citizens would like to think, do the staff regularly ask themselves the question, are we delivering value to the ratepayers today? Late last year, we considered the draft community strategy proposed by the council. In the draft strategy, it was hard to see anything that was a fundamental change from the previous strategy, which the staff acknowledged to have been a failure. So another case of more of the same, and that implies another loop in the downward spiral. My suggestion is that you need to engage in a meaningful way with the community much earlier in any process. For example, with the Akaroa Wharf, and we recently had some discussions, another round about that, in the documents that came to light, there were minutes of meetings going back years, with rooms packed full of council people, with consultants, ECAN, other specialists and so on, and nobody was there from the community. Let's talk about some specific items like sea level rise. Depending on how well you think the human race can organise itself, and it's doing a pretty rotten job at the moment, we can guesstimate the rate of sea level rise. A median approach, Akaroa will see 0.5 metre in the next 40 years and around 1 metre at the end of the century. What's that really going to mean, we ask? I understand the council have people working on what to do about all this, and that's excellent. How about coming and talking to the community, to the people about this at the outset of the work, and talking through the problem and the issues that are going to be arising, rather than just turning up later on with a solution. Partnerships need to start at the beginning. I'm not talking about council organised meetings. More people will turn up if we do the organising. Just send along somebody articulate and knowledgeable. Cruise ships. There was an article published on the council website just last Friday, 3 days ago. It said more cruise ships coming, cruise ships back to Akaroa and so forth. It said that an integrated plan framework is being developed over the next few years, and this will include the opportunity for community consultation. Well, here's another opportunity to get ahead of the game. Involve the community at the outset. What are the issues, solutions, and good ideas? Destination management plan. We hear that a destination management plan is going to be created for Akaroa and possibly the wider peninsula, and that Christchurch, New Zealand are in charge of this effort. There's two issues here. Firstly, this has been talked about for at least 5 years, or maybe more like 10, and yet nothing has actually happened. Secondly, and sadly, this subject has been delegated to Christchurch, New Zealand, an organisation that's consistently demonstrated that they are prepared to treat local communities such as ours as expendable in their tacky pursuit of tourism growth. The Christchurch, New Zealand definition of the word sustainable means keep putting the pressure on until it almost bursts. We want real community involvement in this project from the outset. I mean, you owe that to the Akaroa community. Civil defence. It rained a bit on the 15th of December, and thousands of tonnes of rock and debris came down the hillsides in the eastern bays. These things happen, and while you're busy picking up the pieces, you also wonder how often they'll happen in the future. And you also wonder what happened to civil defence, because it was nowhere to be seen. Akaroa used to have a really good civil defence unit run by volunteers, but it was too hard for the City Council to support that, and over the years it sort of disappeared, and I understand it didn't fit in with central planning ideas of running things. Now, 6 months after the event, there is to be a meeting in Akaroa next week where council staff will finally be fronting up. Well, let's see how that goes. Over the last 6 months, in relation to that particular item, we've also noticed the repeated reluctance of council staff to come and talk to a community group. They keep wanting to deal only with individuals. But we are a group, we're a community, and we want to stay that way. And council staff need to understand that. The speed limit on State Highway 75. You might say that's not our problem, that's NZTA. Well, perhaps not quite. NZTA have proposed to lower the speed limit along the entire length of State Highway 75. And you'll be hard-pressed to find anybody who thinks that's a sensible idea. But look at the difference between this council's approach and what is happening elsewhere in New Zealand. In some areas, Napier, Taupo, Northland, local councils are listening to the concerns of their citizens and are actively standing up to NZTA. A speed reduction on State Highway 75 will be a cost, a frustration, and an inconvenience to people on the far end of the peninsula. They will be the group that's affected most. Many people are annoyed and quite upset about this. But this council came out in support of the NZTA proposal almost instantly when it was first announced, without giving any thought to whether they were representing the community. I mean, I think that's shameful. So what's the common strand here? We have been saying much the same things for years, and you have been listening to them. But not a lot has been happening on the ground. Rates keep going up, and the council approval rating keeps going down. Some effort has been made to base more council resources on the peninsula, and that's been good. But more effort is required to put real meaning into that talk about communities. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to start with an offer. I mean, I'm completely unaware of the desire for for an overarching public meeting on civil defence, the state highway speed limit, the cruise ships, the sea level rise, and we've got an adaptation planning process which will engage each of the communities in the Banks Peninsula, because none of them are the same. The level of sea level rise may be, but the impact will be different. So yep. Akaroa is definitely on the list, and it is a community-led process, not a council-led process. So I'm going to make an offer that we just come over and have a meeting, a public meeting, and address all of these issues.
Yep. Well, thank you very much.
Yep.
Who should I liaise with about that though?
I'm going to liaise with, I'm going to get my office to liaise directly with you.
Fine, thank you.
Tim?
You know, I totally agree with you with regards to the Christchurch Akaroa Highway, except for the east end or the Akaroa side of Little River, where that's been an issue for some time, wanting to slow the speeds. But with regards to Napier, as far as Helmoana, south of is Helmoana and Te Wonga, etc., which is south of Havelock North and Hastings, there's been a huge reduction in speed limits. And it's been with the communities because of the road toll. So, but with the open highways there, they have kept it and they have fought to keep it. But there is a really big difference. So thank you.
All right. Look, thank you very much for coming, Harry. And I'll get my office to be directly in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Friends of Akaroa Museum, Linda Sunderland.
That's it. Thank you.
Hi. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.